This is Casual Babble.
Good morning, you beautiful individual. Welcome back to the show. This is BZ Babbles, and you're enjoying Casual Babble, the Queen City's live stream morning show and podcast coming to you from Ray City, USA. Good morning. Hope you are doing well. Before we hop in, do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell. That way you're notified about all future content on the YouTube channel. If you're enjoying the show on Podbean, do not forget to leave a follow there. And wherever you're enjoying the show from, hop into the chat. Say hello, let me know where you're coming in from, and let's get into it this morning. But before we hop into today's discussion, let's not forget to do our 7 daily affirmations. Here we go. 1, you are inventive. 2, your ideas are meaningful. I'll remember these at some point. 3, you are valuable. 4, you will not be left behind because you will pave the way. 5, you are worthy of love and success. 6, you are powerful. And 7, you are beautiful, and your beauty will transform you. There we go. There are 7 daily affirmations. And let's kick into this morning's discussion. So how has everyone been doing since Monday? I do want to make sure I'm keeping up with you guys. It is Wednesday, so I do want to give you your congratulations on making it to Wednesday. We talk all the time on the show that making it halfway through the week is not always a given thing, right? A lot of times we can't get all the way through the week without taking at least one day off of work, which is, at this point, completely understandable. But yeah, so lots of things happening. Elon Musk still trying to save face with his back and forth on his new Twitter policies, which has, for me, been a little comical, right? He went in and said, everyone have free speech. And of course, once you have a big tycoon like that hopping on, taking over Twitter, and then he says free speech for all, or at least he thinks he understands what that means, and then people, I don't know how many different accounts started masquerading as Elon Musk and then saying funny stuff as they were imitating Elon Musk. Was pretty funny, and then he had them all shut down. Oh dear, but it's still pretty funny. At least those of us who are kind of watching from a distance are getting a kick out of it. But yeah, that's been kind of the trend for the most part for when it comes to kind of business news. Lots of other things happening for sure. But the whole Elon Musk thing is just, you can't not try to find a way to enjoy it because it's pretty much there. So let's talk about, let's see here. Looking for some really fun little bits this morning for you guys. Have you decided what kind of coffee you're going to be using to make sure that you can go into work and operate this morning? I told you on Monday, one of the biggest questions for a Monday isn't whether or not you're going to be going to work, which, let's be honest, for a Monday, that is one of the big questions we often faced is, am I going to go to work today? But the other big question, at least for me, and maybe you might experience this too, is what kind of coffee am I going to choose for the first beverage of the morning in order to make sure that when I get to the office, I'm able to operate? And even if you're working from home, that might still be a question you're pondering, like, do I just make my Keurig this morning, or do I try to dash out real quick to my local QT or Sheetz or even like McDonald's or Starbucks and try to get myself like a Frappuccino or some kind of cold brew, so that I have my soul's being fed this morning, so that I can operate. That's a very important thing for us to be able to, is very much an important thing for us to consider every morning. So one of the things I've been noticing recently, I've been in a lot of interviews recently, and one of the most fearful questions I get is the dreaded, so tell me about yourself thing. A lot of the recruiters I've been talking to start off with this question, and it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know about you, but when I was in freshman year of high school, I was taking my PE class, and I think that was the first time I was ever asked, like, who are you, kind of thing. And pretty can be a little scary being asked that question. And so when you have recruiters asking you that question constantly, it's kind of like, well, I can either never prepare for this and kind of find a unique way to say it every single time, or I can script it out. That way I can just, be very, very consistent and verbatim. Granted, a lot of these are on Zoom calls, so it's not like I can pull up a script and read off of it because that'd be a little weird. But speaking of that question, Hume Johnson, PhD, this is coming from entrepreneur.com, wants to give us 4 easy steps to answer this question because, again, it's a pretty common question. When it comes to interviewing with a recruiter, because a lot of these companies do give you a recruiter first, especially if they're working with someone like a Robert Half company, like Robert Half, or any other kind of recruitment agency before you actually speak to any of the hiring managers or the people on the actual team that you will prospectively be working with. So the first step that Dr. Johnson gives us here is to build a rapport. And before I hop too far into these details, I'm going to make sure to hop into the chats real quick and drop the link to this article in there. So that's currently in the Podbean chat, and now it's going to be in the YouTube chat. There we go. So check those things out. But back to the first step. So the first step that Dr. Johnson gives us is build a rapport. Often when confronted with the "so tell me about yourself," you're engaged in a conversation with people who scarcely know you, because typically it's just based off of the resume that they got off of Indeed, or if you directly apply to their job, then maybe they'll have that. And not too often do I find people who went ahead and looked up my podcast just to get a better idea of me as a person. So don't start talking about the scope of the job. Instead, aim to establish a genuine connection and build a rapport with those asking. Share a bit about your background and situational identity. Your situational identity is where you are in your life right now, a particular circumstance that shapes how you show up in the world or a community that you identify with that helps to shape your individuality. So I never start off with talking about the job. I usually find my starting point when answering this question as App State graduate. I talk about App State. That's where I found my love for radio, go Nears, things like that. Then I move into a little bit of very vaguely about my experience. Like I hopped out of college, went into radio for a little bit, but then got drawn into communications and being kind of part of that background operation to see how things really function. But I always make sure to hop back out of that and not get too far into it, and then hop into outside of work, I've got my podcast, my brainchild. I love it. And I also, not a huge party person, but I like to bowl. I like to binge TV shows, watch movies. I'm a very big bonfire guy, things like that. But yeah, I'll tease vaguely what I've done in the past 7 years outside of college, but I'm not going to harp and go hardcore into what I've been doing, because that's what the other technical jobs that you will be asked are going to be for. Dr. Johnson also says people with good interpersonal skills can build healthy relationships with their colleagues and work better as a team. And this is a quote she's giving us from Brian Spitzberg and William Kupak. People with these skills are thus in high demand. Indeed, many employers say interpersonal and communication skills are very important to gaining leadership positions in their organizations. Dr. Johnson gives us a step 2, which is communicate who you are, not just what you do. When people meet you, they do not meet your credentials, experience, or expertise. Instead, they come into contact with your personality and social skills, also called soft skills, human skills, or power skills. When asked about yourself, foreground your personal attributes and core values. These are your human skills that communicate who you are as a person, not just what you can do. For example, you can declare that you're a very compassionate person, explain why you say you're compassionate, and provide an example from your professional experience where being compassionate was beneficial in that situation. Now, I can definitely work on this a lot more. Like I said, I kind of hop into a bit about I start off with college and how I found my initial passion for radio, but then I kind of delve in vaguely into my experience, but then hop back out to talk about podcast, bonfire person, drink socially kind of thing. But I could find more room like this to be I would say that I'm a very go-to person for a lot of people. If you missed my one of my episodes, I forget which episode it was last week, but I mentioned that I've been a content consultant outside of my jobs for the past 7 years as well. My coworkers, my friends tend to come to me looking for solutions to production or ideas on content, and I've been doing that since even before I graduated college. Even during college, when I was still learning things along with my classmates, they would often come to me because I had figured certain things out in a way where I kind of ended up being known as, say, the transition person. My friend Lindsay, who was the station manager when I joined 90.5 WASU back in the day, she realized that I'm a transition guy. I knew how to put in a pretty lofty, multifaceted project into Audition to make this really theatrical audio teaser, especially when I had my own specialty show, which was a heavy metal show. I'll have to share one of those one day. But yeah, so I because I figured things out quickly, and I love to help people, and I love to kind of provide the angles from which I approach things. I tend to get called upon for those assistances. So those things like that, I probably should try to find a way to incorporate into my conversations when I am being asked the question of who are you, just to give them a better idea of, the kind of person I like to be and the kind of ways in which I like to engage. Again, not only clients, but also friends and coworkers. So definitely an area of improvement for me, I'd say. Dr. Johnson also says employers, excuse me, I don't understand. Let me take a quick segue here. I don't understand how I can go all night having not eaten or drank anything, and while I'm in the middle of talking to you guys, I have to belch. What is that? There's literally nothing I have that I've recently imbibed that would require me to have to belch. What is this? What is this? Like, body? Can you wait until 8 o'clock? Can you wait till 8 o'clock? This is all that I ask of you. 8 o'clock. And then you can belch to your heart's content. Your mother's working downstairs and is in the middle of really big conferences, but I don't care about that. Wait till after 8 o'clock. Okay. Back to our regularly scheduled program. But Dr. Johnson also says employers value human skills highly because they know job-specific skills can be taught. They therefore look for skills such as leadership, empathy, communication, adaptability, and self-awareness. These can signal whether you can interact effectively and harmoniously with other people. People who are empathetic are seen as better coworkers and leaders because they tend to create the right climate and set the right tone for employees and colleagues to thrive. Now, despite that being said, and I do believe that to be very, very true, just remember, even if you are that kind of person, but you find yourself going into a work situation where the atmosphere, the environment just doesn't seem to acquaint that, in the sense that, look, we've all gone into work situations where the energy is just not great. We found ourselves in situations where it can be pretty toxic. And here's the thing, what I want you to take from this, from me as well, is yes, I find what Dr. Johnson here is saying is very, very true. But at the same time, if you happen to find yourself in a work environment that doesn't receive these elements from you very well, that's not on you. If you happen to find yourself, say, in a toxic work environment, that's not on you. And you can't be the expected to be the one person who's going to take a not positive work environment and flip it on its head. That's not your job, unless of course you're some kind of organizational psychologist. Then it probably is your job, but typically that's not the jobs we're going into. So if you find yourself bringing those elements into the table, but based on how the environment's been set up, it's not being received well, that's not on you. Just know that it's not on you. Okay, so step 3 that Dr. Johnson gives us is to communicate your competencies and pain points to solve. Reveal your capabilities, including areas of specialty, technical knowledge, and expertise. In addition, show how your competencies help to solve pain points in your niche and the results you've achieved. For example, you could say I'm excellent at marketing. I created a digital marketing campaign for X company and they were able to increase sales by 50%. This is important because it allows those listening to recognize that you have a strong personal brand that gets results. Communicating the problems your competencies solve also helps you to land roles where your talents are valued. Engage in work that sparks your interest in assignments where you can offer the most value. Now, I was going to take that differently before I read on in that section, because one thing I like to do, because the other question you always get is like, what would you say is like your greatest weakness? I was told a long time ago to take that question to point out a weakness, but gauge it in a way where it'll seem like a positive for your prospective employer. So, for instance, one of the things I often mention when I'm asked that question is that I am what do I say? That I'm very self-critical. So I always talk about that I'm very self-critical and I am constantly aiming for a higher baseline for myself. And oftentimes I'm not, like, I say it a lot better in the moment. I'm not saying it very, very well here, but I talk about how I'm very self-critical and that I'm constantly aiming for a higher baseline for myself. So so that can cause me to be a bit of a perfectionist. I say it a lot better in the middle of those interviews, I swear to God, because it's typically received well and there's always a laugh after it. Why I can't do it here, I have no idea. But I typically say it a lot better. And then step 4, Dr. Johnson says to differentiate yourself. So state your point of differentiation. What do you bring to the table that others do not? How do you stand out from the competition? How does this X factor add value? In today's fiercely competitive job market, it is crucial to separate yourself from the pack. What makes you different could be a creative approach you take to solve a challenging problem, a fresh perspective for a more efficient way of doing a task. So one of the things I always mention that when I'm asked what I bring to the table in an interview is, and this is because I've realized over time that employers are not looking for someone who's necessarily set in their ways per se. For instance, I was in the pod for this really awesome job with Duke Energy with like their innovation department, something like that. It would have been out of the NODA area. Oh, I was so hoping for this job. But I realized in talking to them that they're not looking for anyone who's been in a certain role so long that they are set in their way or their preference of how to operate within that role. They're really looking for somebody who is going to be able to take on their particular structure and make that structure their own. So one of the things that I always like to mention whenever I'm asked, what do I bring to the table? I always mention that I like to maintain a malleable mindset. Again, that's a malleable mindset. And I go from there and I say, I know that every company has its own personal structure and has its own method to its own madness. So I find that being able to maintain a mindset where I can go in and assimilate myself or mold myself into that company structure is what's going to allow me to operate most efficiently from within that position. So that's like my go-to line pretty much every single time I'm asked that question is basically letting them know that I'm going to be able to take your structure because I'm a quick learner and I mentioned that as well. But I'm going to be able to perceive your structure and receive it, and I'm going to kind of break it down. I'm going to try to understand it. And again, I've been told in the past that I've got a great attention to detail so that I can not only understand and conceptualize the company structure, but find important questions that oftentimes people aren't asking. But yeah, that's one of my go-tos. So consider like what people are looking for. What have you learned over time that people are looking to see in a prospective new employee and how that's going to benefit you. So my go-to again is to always let them know that I have a very malleable mindset, and so I can mold myself to take on whatever structure that you guys have preference for in your work environment. And that typically is also received very well. I've never had any kind of like negative pushbacks from that or have left anyone with kind of like a question mark face on their face, you know what I'm saying? It's always been perceived pretty well. So I think that'll be my go-to for a while here. So yeah, let's hop into some submissions this morning. Before I do, if you've ever had any questions regarding how you can submit your stories, questions, or office gossip to the show for conversation, there are two ways. You can head on over to reddit.com. We have our own community called Talk Office Gossip. Additionally, you can head on over to casualbabble.com. There is a page called Submit Your Story, and that is where you can submit your story. My admin will let you know on both platforms when your submission will be used on the show, and if by any chance, and usually just for pure time reasons, that your submission happens to not be used for the show, it'll be included in the advice column section of the monthly Casual Babble newsletter. The next one, I believe, is coming out tomorrow. So make sure that you are signed up to receive that newsletter. And that sign up form is going to be on the homepage of casualbabble.com. It's labeled sign up and keep up right there, name and email address, and you'll be able to be on that mailing list. Also, if you happen to be supporting the channel via Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee, the links I'm going to also put here in the chat, then you're going to also find yourself included on that newsletter. Now, it's typically tier 2 and higher on Patreon will get you the opportunity to be showcased on that newsletter. And then Buy Me a Coffee is still being kind of worked out a little bit, but I can definitely tell you at this point, any donations made through Buy Me a Coffee will definitely earn you a spot there as well. So check out all those links. The Submit Your Story links as well as the Support the Channel links are already in the chats for for Podbean and for YouTube. So check those out regardless of where you're enjoying the show. Yeah. Let's do it. Okay, so the first submission this morning that I have is okay. My boss is looking at porn. Let's read. Okay, so I am an IT manager and report directly to the CIO. One of my reports discovered that actually my CIO was watching porn on his corporation computer. I'm looking for advice on how I should handle it. As of now, at least 2 people know. I'm concerned there will be backlash, but I'm also concerned that if I don't, hold on. I'm concerned there will be backlash, but I'm also concerned. What if I don't say anything? Was one of those supposed to be unconcerned? I'm not quite sure. Well, so, I would just that's a fun one. So honestly, I would just probably have a one-on-one. Well, so you report to this person, so you probably can't be the person to facilitate the convo. Let's see here. That is a weird one. I'll be honest, it's a weird one. If this was someone who was working under you, I'd say it's pretty easy. I would just say, like, set up a one-on-one with them and just be like, dude, I get sometimes at work it can be a little boring, but this is not what we should be doing while we're at work. I need you to, at the very least, not use company resources for that. Okay? You have a phone. At the very least, that's what I would say. If this was somebody who works under you, but you're saying that this is someone that you report to, so that's a bit tougher. Because it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, granted, from based on what you said, no one's walked in on him rocking the jolly. So it's not like, I don't know if I would say it's a massive HR issue at this point. But that's a slippery slope. I would definitely be just yeah, that's weird. I wasn't expecting that for the first submission this morning. I would just consider a couple questions then. Like, okay, how big is the company? Is there a particular code of conduct that you can use as a resource and you can just like overview real quick? And is there any kind of way you can, if it's a big enough deal, is there any way you can anonymously bring it up to someone who happens to be above them, or like, do you, yeah, or like, can you tell your HR team? Like, I mean, it's again, no one walked in on him doing anything physically, just watching it to my knowledge, based on what you've said. But yeah, that's a slippery thing. That's like, if you trust your HR department, you can always say, hey, look, I've been made aware of these things. I don't know if they're true, but I wonder if someone could ask or like delve into, like, how would you say this? Like, if you trust your HR, and hopefully you do, then I would say, hey, look, I've received these reports that this happens to be happening on this individual's corporation computer. I don't know if they're true, but I also want to make sure that this should probably be addressed. Is there a way for us to just touch base with the CIO and be like, hey, we've heard this. We don't know if it's true, but if, like, I don't know. That's hard. That is really hard. I'm usually not stumped like that. I'll usually say right away. I'll usually have something pretty quick and snappy for you, but that took me off guard a bit. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. But yeah. Damn. Because it's one thing where it's like, because again, it's a whole other thing if the person we're talking about was under you, but you're under them. So it's like, how well do you know them? That's a good question. How well do you know the CIO? Because a lot of times people can have really strong convos with their bosses, depending on how long you've been with the company and how well you've gotten to know them. Do you have a rapport enough with the CIO to where you can like you can probably still ask to have a one-on-one and be like, hey dude, I heard this. I don't know if it's true, but if it goes anywhere, I may have to do a clean. So I wonder if like you just clean your computer, like, and just don't use the company computer anymore. Yeah, that's at the moment. That's the best option I got for you. That took me off guard. I'm surprised it took me off guard. I really am. Let's see here. The next one is labeled with a question: how to keep a positive attitude at work. What helps you to keep a positive attitude at work? How do you not read into other actions as something they're doing against you when it seems passive aggressive, but it may in fact not be that what it seems? How do you stop yourself from feeling envious of others' success? How do you fake it until you make it? Just a few questions I have today as I ruminate over a workplace environment. So when it comes to being envious of others' success, first let's gauge how long you've been with the company. If you've been newer to a company, don't worry about it. This is something I've struggled with for 8 years at this point. I've talked about it before, but when I found my love for radio in college, I met a group of who I believe to be some of the most creative, ambitious people of my life. And we became a really strong, pretty close-knit group during the last couple of years of college. And as we graduated and went on from college, I was the only one of the group who didn't have some kind of radio job or TV job out the gate. And to this day, I really haven't had my shot at radio like the rest of them have. A number of them went out to California. Two of them went up to like Pennsylvania near Philadelphia. One got to launch his own radio station. Another one got their own morning show here in North Carolina. And me, as this person who was wayward earlier in college and who found his calling, but was the only one who didn't get an opportunity like that, I've been dealing with this, like, not imposter syndrome, but like this sense of like, why didn't I get that opportunity? Like, what's wrong with me kind of thing. I've been dealing with that for years. But when it comes to a specific workplace, one of the things I would suggest is gauge how long you've even been there. If you're newer there, then you're likely still learning. You're still adjusting to it. So there's no reason to feel envious of anyone's success, especially if they've been there longer. So they just know the job better. But also, I one of the things I keep in mind to help abate my own concerns is that everything in its own time. Granted, even that can be like, how long? Because I want to do well now. But yeah, just gauge your own situation. If you always ask questions, if you want to make sure you've got clarification on something so you can operate in a particular area better. Again, communication is going to be key for really any kind of work environment. Always be communicative. Don't pull any questions because you're worried if you're going to sound stupid. Honestly, just at the end of the day, make sure that you've done what you can to where no one can say you didn't ask. Is my opinion on that. How do you fake it till you make it? Are you somewhere where you want to be? Even we shouldn't have to fake it to make it. Ideally, you're in an environment, in a position that you want, or at least where you can move into where you want to be. So consider whether or not you're in the right environment at all. Are you in the right job? Should you consider shifting to a different position or a different company, so that you don't have to fake it till you make it. You can just engage and you can operate well and develop from there. Those are my go-tos for that. But yeah. One, don't worry about. Find ways to not compare yourself to other people's success. It'll serve no one. It definitely won't serve you. And then if you're worried about faking it till you make it, consider whether or not you're in the right position in the first place, because it sounds like you may not be if that's the question you're asking. Let's see here. New submission. Question is, how can I deal with an insubordinate employee who is older than me? How can I deal with an insubordinate? Okay, same question. I am the assistant manager for the record. I have an older barista at the coffee shop I work at who refuses to listen to me. I will ask her to do something like take out the trash. She will grab the barrel, then spend 20 minutes sweeping the floors, another few minutes wiping down tables, then she will take out the trash. The issue I have with this is she has been told multiple times the trash barrel cannot be left outside the back door for more than a few minutes, or we get a fine from the building for breaking fire code. She's been taught multiple times on how to make beverages to company standard. She will, for the next drink or so, do it correctly, then immediately reverts back to how she has decided how to do it. She also sort of tells me to do things in a bossy manner, like I am old, I know better than you. Like if she is taking one customer, if she is taking one customer, she will tell me to take the next one when they have told her they are ordering together. There's also an issue with her not washing her hands unless she is able to use the bathroom, but that's not a health code thing. That's more of a health code thing. She's been here 2 months already and is not grasping the job at the pace we need her. She is still struggling with making basic like lattes and cappuccinos and has just turned any of us out unless it's our boss telling her otherwise. My boss is here 1 to 2 days a week because she is also managing the neighboring store, and we are 10 times busier than they are 10 times busier than us, and they need more attention. So I'm left with in charge most days, and I am at a loss with what to do. Should I reach out to HR, or should I try to talk to my boss about this? Fire her. Honestly, age is not a thing. There is a tier typically with any job environment. Your assistant manager. It's one thing if it's like there's not enough being offered here for training and like so there aren't resources for the employee to get it. This person seems to get it. They don't care. Fire her. Yeah, that's my suggestion, honestly. Just fire her. I won't lose any sleep over it, and I don't think you would either. But I mean, I don't know if you have to reach out to HR for that first, but go ahead. Reach out to HR, give them the situation, and they'll probably also tell you. Fire her. I think it's super simple. Okay. Next submission is another question. What do you call this type of manager? I work for a wonderful woman, and as far as managers go, she's not too bad, but you always feel like there's just a little bit more than what she is saying. She has that management style where you can tell she is pulling the strings on each of us and sharing information with others, but just enough to either make a perfect project work or go in the direction that she wants it to. There's also a lot of omission. You can ask a question and get only half an answer, but you're not aware you're only getting half an answer until down the road. It feels very manipulative, maybe disrespectful. I remember speaking to a previous manager about this and said that it isn't a management style, but just pure manipulation. But I'm beginning to think that there might actually be a professional based tactic to this as they learn in some sort of project management certification course. Does anyone know what this is? I found that these people also, through though they manage you, don't understand nor have done the work that you do, and that there's a little bit of micromanagement going on. Uh, hmm. It's weird to say that you opened up with Wonderful Woman and then go right into calling her manipulative. I'm a little torn as to what direction you mean to go here. What do you think is not being included in these conversations? What's being withheld from you? Uh, she doesn't necessarily have to give you all the information she has. But she does have to be careful. Because she is privy to more info than you are. So, can you elaborate on what you think is not being mentioned? Do you think that what's not being mentioned initially? So, is what you're learning down the road that isn't included in the initial answer she gives you something that you think is vital in the moment? Or is it just kind of like, oh, that makes sense kind of thing? It's a little confusing though, again, because you started off calling her a wonderful woman and now she's manipulative. So a little torn on that. But those are the questions I have in response to it. Because otherwise it doesn't seem like there's really a clear direction for trying to figure something out. Yeah. Okay, so final submission this morning is titled New Job Advice. I recently accepted a new job in a field that I have little experience in, but it's an ideal job that is on par with what I want to do in the future. Will look fabulous on resumes, pays well, and is at a place I am proud to be a part of. I've been there for a little over a month, and I'm having a hard time overcoming the fears and anxiety that come along with a new job. You know the feelings, like simple mistakes make you feel so stupid, even though you know it's normal to make them. You also convince yourself that others think you are stupid for making them. You begin questioning if you really fit into the job culture. You don't believe when people compliment your performance. You want to vent to someone, but don't know who you can trust yet. Excuse me, 1 second. Again, body. The hell? Anyway, you're nervous to ask for help because you think people think you should know this. You got overloaded with information, and even though you got the basic skills down, you doubt yourself. My biggest problem is I hate when I am not great at things right away, and I know that it's so silly sounding, but I just really want to prove myself and feel like I'm failing to do so. I know that everyone is the new person at some point. I guess I just want to know how long does it take to get really comfortable and confident. I have a new job and I haven't had a new job in so long, and I don't recall ever being like this in the beginning, but that could be because those jobs weren't as coveted as this one is to me. Anyone have Do you have tips or do you have tips or in a similar place or are you in a similar place and can you relate? So I absolutely 1000% get the idea of wanting to hop into a new environment and be that top tier person off the bat, but that's not a realistic expectation for yourself. And granted, no good manager is going to have that same expectation of you unless you're hopping into some kind of like senior position. If it's entry level or if it's like even junior level, the expectation is not going to be you're going to walk in there and be 100% undoubtedly perfect from the get go. There's going to be breathing room from the very beginning. Now, a couple of your comments earlier and your submission, I did start to have a little question about, like when you mentioned it would look fabulous on resumes. Um, uh, just because, when it comes to reasons why you're taking a job, certain, I mean, certain positions will always look fabulous on a resume or a CVS, like, or CSV, like saying, "Oh, I was a CEO here," or "I was a chief officer here." Yeah, those will look great, but were those in line with what you are doing, and does it like have meaning to you? But for the most part, I'd say, yeah, 100%. I get that. That's one of the reasons why try to be so attentive in training, is because I want to conceptualize the structure of the company that I'm joining as quickly as possible, and I want to be able to kind of seem like the top tier person off the bat. But it's not a realistic expectation. I mean, you might do very, very well coming off of training and just hitting the floor right away, but no one's expecting you to be perfect. Like, most of the time they're not expecting you to be perfect, and if they are, their expectations are not proper, and that's a them issue. But yeah, you've only been at the job for you said a little over a month, or yeah, a little over a month. Give yourself time, dude. And again, if you feel like you were given a lot of information at the beginning and you're not sure you've retained a lot of it, ask questions. That's why you're there. I'm assuming you've got plenty of contact with your immediate supervisor, or you're on a team. Ask questions, get clarification, and see if, like, now I know I talk a lot of times about, like, when you're not at work, disengage from work, but if you're that concerned about it, you can always find, I'm sure, some kind of tutorial on almost anything on YouTube, or to, like, find someone who has years of experience on YouTube who can provide you, like, quick and easy tips to handle certain things at work in certain kinds of jobs. But give yourself time. I'm sure you're doing fine, dude. Like, you got the job in the first place, so I'm pretty sure that means that you have enough credentials to have earned it, and you've got the experience to take on the position and move up from there. Aside from that, you should be good to go. Just give yourself more time, and I think you'll find yourself more comfortable in the pretty near future. Thank you for joining me this morning on Casual Babble. I really appreciate it. Again, the next newsletter comes out tomorrow, noon Eastern Standard Time. So again, if you want to keep up with the latest news on Casual Babble and my content overall, make sure you sign up. That's going to be on the homepage of casualbabble.com. The sign up form is right there beneath the main picture.